guys, how's it going? Laura with Garden Answer. In today's video, I want to talk about a bunch of proven winners and new plants for 2019. And I've been really looking forward to putting this video together because I'm excited about it. I get excited about new plants. Some of these I was able to test out in our garden last year, so I have some firsthand experience with them, and others I will have coming this year, and I'll get to try them out for the first time, and hopefully you guys will be able to get your hands on some as well, so we can try them out together. And you guys know that we've worked with proven winners for a really long time, like for several years now. They're just a great group of people, and they just happen to have a bunch of great plants. So I'm going to share some annuals, perennials, and shrubs today. We're going to start with annuals first. Let's just jump right into the list. First one is Rockin Fuchsia Salvia. I had the opportunity to plant this salvia last year, and it was a really fun one because this is a completely different color of salvia. In fact, they consider it a breakthrough in the kind of realm of salvias to have this vibrant of a pink. And the calyx, so the thing that holds the blooms on, is kind of almost a black color. So once the petals have faded and they've fallen off, it still looks like the plant is kind of in bloom. So I never felt the need to deadhead it, which I'm a chronic deadheader. I don't like my plants to look messy. So I love plants where I don't feel the need to continually do that. And this plant will continue to bloom all the way through the season with no deadheading. So it's very low maintenance. You just need to put it in a spot with lots of sun. It can tolerate part sun, but it will perform the best, get the biggest, have the most amount of blooms in full sun. You want to make sure to give it consistent water and also consistent fertilizer, as you kind of want to do with all your annuals to get the best performance out of them. It attracts a bunch of pollinators, so honeybees, hummingbirds, butterflies. I love to see that kind of activity in my garden. Now it does grow about 24 to 36 inches tall and maybe about 24 to 30 inches wide. I experienced it staying on kind of the smaller side. I'm used to growing salvias like Rockin Plain the Blues. That one got huge for me last year. This one stayed a little bit smaller, and I think I had it sited in a spot that maybe it was shaded a little bit more, and that was my problem. So if I were to give it a full sun spot, I would expect it to get as big as the others. Number 2 on the list is Supertunia Blue Skies. Now this is one I'm really excited to grow. I haven't grown this one yet, but it's one of my favorite colors. So you guys know I love purples and pinks, but I love this color of Supertunia. It's kind of more on the lighter purple side, like a really light lavendery blue color. And I love it paired with like light yellow, white, and salmon pink. And I plan to do a lot of my containers with that kind of color combination this year. But like all other Supertunias, this one is self-cleaning. You do not have to deadhead it. It just keeps on blooming all season long. Like I said, weekly fertilizing is really important for these annuals, and that's what I do with all of my Supertunias. This one trails up to 30 inches. It's really a vigorous Supertunia, and it's suited for the landscape as well. So you can use it in pots, you can use it in hanging baskets, in the garden somewhere. If you've got a hole in a flower bed in a sunny spot and you want to pop some color there, this would be a really good one to use. It also attracts pollinators as well. Number 3 on my list is an annual, but it's also an edible. It's called Amazel Basil, and this is one I was able to plant this last year as well. It was a huge grower. I was so impressed with the amount of growth it had. It's like 24 to 30 inches at least. They were massive plants, wonderful flavor. The really unique thing about Amazel Basil is that it's resistant to downy mildew, which is a huge problem with other basil varieties. It also has sterile seed. So when it starts to form flowers and starts to bloom, a lot of times with regular basil varieties, that affects the flavor, it affects the growth, but it doesn't with this variety. Now it's best to regularly trim your plant and pinch the stems back during the season so that you have fresh, tender growth, because of course the flavor is better on the tender stuff for any basil variety, but a small amount of flower set on this variety does not affect the flavor. I enjoyed that basil until we had a really hard frost and it finally took the plant. But if you guys can get your hands on some of that, I think you would really enjoy that variety. Number 4 is Color Blaze Golden Dreams Coleus, and this one is a real standout, I think, in terms of color and leaf shape. So the color, it's kind of like a chartreuse backdrop. Chartreuse green, really bright, but the veining is really deep red and it's like heavily veined. So it's really, I would say it's almost half and half chartreuse and red. I think it's really pretty. And then the edges of the leaves are kind of serrated. So it's got almost, not like a ruffly appearance. I kind of have a hard time explaining, but I just think it's a really unique looking coleus. It grows about 24 to 36 inches tall, so really a good sized plant, and about 18 to 36 inches wide. And the cool thing about the Color Blaze series is that they can tolerate both sun and shade. So you can site it pretty much anywhere in your garden. Now, if you live in a really dry climate like I do, they do prefer to have a little bit of protection from the sun in the afternoon, like the blazing hot part of the day. They really benefit from that. but in most other climates they can handle either or, which I think is pretty amazing. Number 5 is Superbell's Doublet Love Swept. We did plant this in a container last year, and it's a really unique, really pretty Superbells. It's got a deep pink flower with a really clear white edge around it, and it's a double. And I love any flower that's a double, so I just think it's a really unique, pretty plant. It also is a smaller Superbells, so it doesn't get enormous, so it makes it really great for like hanging baskets, like smaller containers, or a smaller window box. You can pair it with smaller grasses, things like that, or like a gift basket. I think it would be great in a situation like that. They do like a part sun to sunny exposure. They do the best with that, and they kind of serve as a spiller and a filler at the same time. So they'll grow like 6 to 10 inches tall, and then they'll spill over about 16 inches. So they're still a pretty good sized plant, and they fill both of those roles, which I think is really great. They do also attract hummingbirds, and you do not have to deadhead them. They will continue blooming, like from planting all the way until frost. Number 6 is Truffula Pink Gomphrena, which is also a type of globe amaranth. And I'm really excited to grow this one because I love the shape of the blooms. They're just like little round spheres that are hot pink. They're continuous bloomers, so they keep reblooming all through the season with, again, no deadheading is necessary on this one, which is awesome. And they're kind of a medium-sized plant, so they grow about 22 to 28 inches tall and about 22 to 25, 26 inches wide. So I guess that's kind of a largest size plant, but I'm excited to plant some in the landscape. I think I'm gonna do a big drift in one of my flower beds and then maybe tuck some into containers and try them both ways. These are crazy heat and drought tolerant. So if you live in an area where you get lots of heat, not a lot of water, this is a really great annual for you. They also attract bees and butterflies, and most of the seed that they throw, because this can be a problem with other globe amaranths, most of it is not viable, so it won't be sprouting up all over the place in your garden for seasons to come. And the last annual on my list is called Diamond Mountain Euphorbia. And you might be familiar with Diamond Frost Euphorbia, maybe Diamond Delight Euphorbia. I've grown Diamond Frost a lot, and I use it more as a kind of accent plant because it's a little bit airier. It stays kind of like on the small to medium side. Diamond Mountain gets enormous. Like it gets 24 to 36 inches tall and wide. I mean, just this huge mass of white blooms, really low maintenance, drought tolerant. You don't have to deadhead it, which is awesome. It likes part sun to sun, and it does perform the best in a full sun situation, but it's in trials because they trial these plants all over the place and in all kinds of different situations. It's performed really well in shadier locations as well. So it's nice to have something that's a little bit versatile that way. This one also resists deer, so if that's a problem in your area, this might be a great annual for you to try. And I think the biggest thing for me about this Euphorbia is that it stands up to the vigor of Supertunias, which not a lot does, because Supertunias and like sweet potato vines, those two plants, especially like Supertunia bubblegum, they grow so huge, they take up so much space that it's hard to find something that can like hold its own. So I'm actually planting some Diamond Mountain and Supertunia bubblegum together this year, and we'll see what happens. So now let's move on to perennials. The first one on my list is called Fall in Love Sweetly Anemone. And this is one of the flowers I planted in one of our friends' flower beds last year. We planted some gorgeous hydrangeas, the anemones, and then some hostas in front. I thought it was a really pretty blend. And it's a type of anemone. If you're familiar with the older varieties, they spread like wildfire in your garden. They spread by rhizome, so they spread underneath the soil and then just pop up all over the place. This one has been improved to where it does spread, but it spreads very slowly. So if you love the anemones, you love that kind of flower, but you don't want something that's going to become a complete thug in your garden, this is a really good one to try. They grow about 20 to 26 inches tall and about 24 to 30 inches wide, and they have just that beautiful clear pink semi-double bloom, which I love. And last, they do attract butterflies and they resist deer and rabbits. Number 2 on my perennial list is called Summerific Holy Grail Hibiscus. Now this one, you guys are going to be surprised at me because I have just said over and over again that I don't like red blooms in my garden, and I typically don't. There's a few exceptions I will make. This one I'm excited to try. I actually ordered a couple of these. I'm going to put them out on the west side of our house. We don't have a whole lot out there, so I think it'll work really well because there's not a whole lot of colors for it to like try to blend well with. But this one is called Holy Grail because that's what it is. It's kind of like the Holy Grail of hibiscus. You've got these 8 to 9 inch super like striking red flowers, and then the foliage is almost black. So you have that intense contrast, and that intrigues me. And so I really just want to try to grow it. It grows in part sun to sun. I think that they do the best in full sun. And they'll grow about 4 to 4.5 feet tall and about 5 feet wide. These perennial hibiscus are kind of interesting because they're always ones that down at the garden center we'd get a call every single year saying, hey, I think my hibiscus is dead, what's going on? These are a type that come up fresh from the ground every single year, and they like grow into this kind of shrub. So you kind of expect them to, like, I don't know, be bigger and not start from zero every single year. And they're one of the last things to come out of dormancy. So just give them more time, just wait, and they will push through and grow. It's one of those things you just have to be patient with it. And then they start to bloom midsummer and go all the way through early fall, and they're a zone 4 through 9. Number 3 is called Cat's Pajamas Nepeta, which is a type of catmint, and it feels really weird to call it Nepeta because I've always said Nepeta, but I keep hearing people say Nepeta, and I think that's proper. Plant names are hard sometimes, but this is a really fun one because it blooms all the way from the soil to the tips. So you get these indigo blue colored flowers for a lot of the summer. And this variety blooms about 3 weeks earlier than the rest of the Nepeta varieties. And if you cut it back like midsummer or so, it will rebloom really well again. This is another type of plant that has a really pretty colored calyx. So once the blooms have kind of dried up and fallen off, it's kind of still looks like a rosy purple colored stalk. So it looks like it's in bloom even when it's not, which I really appreciate. And this is more of a compact kind of Nepeta, so it grows like 12 to 14 inches tall, and I think like 18 to 20 inches wide or so it's wider than it is tall. I actually planted about 5 of these out in my garden really late in the season last year, so I'm really looking forward to seeing them grow this year. They do like a full sun situation. I think they can tolerate kind of a part shade, but do best in full sun. And they also attract tons of pollinators. So if you want to have honeybees, hummingbirds, and butterflies around, this is a great one to plant. Number 4 on the list is actually a group of plants because there are 6 new ones coming out, 6 different colors. They're called Pyromania, Kniphofia, or a type of red hot poker. And I really like the names, they're kind of catchy. So there's Orange Blaze, Rocket's Red Glare, Hot and Cold, Backdraft, Solar Flare, and Flashpoint. So I have planted both Flashpoint and Hot and Cold. In fact, I used some of the blooms of the Hot and Cold in an arrangement, a cut arrangement, and they lasted forever. And I never thought about using that type of bloom in a fresh flower arrangement, and I thought it was a really beautiful element. But my absolute favorite is called Flashpoint because the color is just like right up my alley. We've got chartreuse green, kind of yellow, kind of ages to cream, and it just plays so nicely with all the other colors in my garden. They grow about 4 to 4.5 feet tall and about 3 feet wide, and just the structure of them brings so much drama, I think. They have these just long stalks with the flowers on top, and the flowers are pretty good size, and then just that grassy texture. I like grasses in the garden, so when you get like that clump of grass plus the big blooms, it's just like a twofer. Now these are a pollinator attractor as well. They do attract hummingbirds, honeybees, and butterflies. They are not quite as hardy as the other perennials I've talked about earlier. They are zone 5 through 9. Everything's looking good so far this winter with them. We are in a zone 5, so I think they're going to do really great. Number 5 in the perennial category is actually another group of plants because there are 3 of them coming out. There are perennial phlox, like the ground cover type. This is a type of plant that every single spring when I was down at the garden center more often, people would come in every single day and ask, what is that carpet of blooms I'm seeing everywhere? What is in bloom right now? And it was always that perennial phlox. They just put on such an amazing show in the spring. So there are 3 different colors. So there's magenta sprite, rose sprite, and purple sprite. I personally have ordered the purple sprite. I'm really excited to get it in the garden. I actually have no perennial phlox, none of the ground cover type anyway, in our garden yet. I know that I've got tons of holes where I need some spring color. I personally do not have any ground cover phlox yet, so I'm really looking forward to putting some in. They grow about 6 to 8 inches tall and about 18 to 22 inches wide and are a zone 3 through 8, so they're very winter hardy. They also prefer kind of a gritty alkaline soil, which is not a ton of plants that really like kind of a slightly alkaline soil, which is what we have here. So they tend to do really, really well here. They also like full sun. They can tolerate a little bit more shade than other phlox varieties, but they still do perform the best in full sun. And our last one in the perennial category are Heuchera, and this is also another group of new plants because there are 5 new varieties. There are 3 new ones in the Dolce line and 2 new ones in the Primo line. So let me explain the difference in the lines really quick. The Dolce line is a little bit more of a medium statured Heuchera. So they have medium sized leaves. They're kind of just more on the medium size, so they're easy to tuck in places. The Primo line are the monster Heucheras. Like the leaves will get like face size. They're huge. They're a really striking, they're all striking. They've all got beautiful color of foliage and beautiful flowers, but you know, you can use them in different situations. If you have more room, you can plant a Primo. If you don't have as much room, plant a Dolce. The first Heuchera in the Dolce line is called Cherry Truffles, and I think that's an absolutely perfect name. When the new leaves come out, they're super bright red and really ruffly, and I think that's such a pretty texture. And then as they age, they kind of turn into a deeper mahogany red. And then as all Heucheras do, they do have blooms that are light pink, so really pretty, and they grow about 8 to 10 inches tall and about 30 inches wide. And a cool thing about this is that they can take sun or shade. And I know a lot of us think of Heucheras as just being kind of more of a shade-loving plant, and they do really well in the shade, and we use them a lot because they can handle shade and bring color at the same time, but it's nice to be able to use them out in the sun as well. The second one is called Spearmint. Now I really like this one. It has kind of a light green leaf with dark green veining, and I think it's pretty just even without any promise of bloom. And the blooms are beautiful. They're bicolored. They have like a dark pink tip and a light pink base. But I just love the various green colors. I think it's really pretty to use in a shadier situation, just to have that really lush look. This one also grows about 8 to 10 inches tall and about 30 inches wide. So the last Heuchera in the Dolce line is called Apple Twist, and this one is really interesting because the leaves change color through the season. So when they newly emerge, they've got a lot of red in them, and then they have kind of chartreuse, and they age into kind of an apple green, so you kind of get a multiple effects throughout the season. They have a cream colored flower instead of pink, which I think is really pretty. I love to use those in flower arrangements. They're a great filler flower. And they're zone 4 through 9, and so are the other two that I just talked about. Now this one does get a little bit taller at 10 to 12 inches and gets about 20 to 24 inches wide. And then the first Heuchera in the Primo line is called Mahogany Monster. Now this forms a clump of huge, deep mahogany colored glossy leaves. Beautiful plant. And then the bloom spikes are burgundy red, and then the buds are kind of pink, and then they open up a cream. And they grow about 12 to 16 inches tall and 22 to 28 inches wide. And the last one in the Primo category is called Peachberry Ice. And I was able to plant about 7 of these in the garden last year. I planted 5 out in a shady spot, and then I planted 2 in containers. They all did really well. I'm really looking forward to see how they do this year. But this is a really good one to add some orange into shadier areas in your garden. They kind of have an apricot orange color with like a silver kind of overlay on top of the leaves. They're just beautiful cream colored flowers, and then pink on the underside of the leaves. So you kind of get like that multi effect. And then when it gets later on in the summer, the leaf color kind of mellows out a little bit, but this one gets huge. It gets 8 to 10 inches tall and like almost 3 feet wide at maturity. Now we're moving into the last category, which is shrubs, and the first one is called Scentlandia itea, or Sweet Spire. And this particular Sweet Spire is really neat because it only grows about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. So it's very easy to find a spot for it in your garden. And it does have better fragrance and better hardiness at zones 5 through 9 than other Sweet Spires. And I do love the shape of the blooms. They're long, white, kind of like brush shaped, and the fragrance is amazing. So we were in Michigan a couple of years ago. I was sitting out on a patio. We were in some test gardens, and I could smell something just sweet in the air, and that's what it was. There was a Sweet Spire, one of these blooming, and it perfumed the entire area. It was amazing. And the last thing about this shrub is that it can tolerate really wet conditions. So if that's something that you've struggled with in your garden, this is a really great option. Number 2 is a strongbox ilex, or inkberry holly. This is a really good native evergreen substitute for a boxwood. So if you live in an area where you struggle with boxwoods like boxwood blight or winterburn, this is a really good one for you to kind of switch over to because it takes to pruning just as well as a boxwood does. This particular variety grows about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, and I actually have a few in my greenhouse that I am excited to plant. I didn't get to it last fall, so I'm going to plant them this spring, and I did plant one up in a wicker basket and have it by our back door through the winter, and it's super pretty. I'm really just thrilled to try something new, and they are a zone 5 through 9. Number 3 is called a Centaura Double Blue Lilac. This is one that I have planted in my garden. I planted it last spring while it was actually in bloom. It was part of one of our vlogs that we put together. It was really bad weather that day. I remember that. It was windy and rainy, but the blooms are beautiful, huge panicles, and every bloom is double. It's a really light lavendery blue color. They grow about 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, are super disease resistant to deer. And I don't know if you guys knew this, I didn't, but there are 15 different species of lilac, and the one that this one comes out of happens to be the most fragrant out of all 15 of those species. So this one smells amazing. Lilacs also do really well in alkaline soils. They are adaptable to a lot of different situations, but when something does really well in alkaline, I always get really excited. And another thing about lilacs, especially this type that's not a reblooming type, they bloom on old wood. So the best time to prune a lilac is right immediately after it's done blooming. Number 4 is called Tough Stuff Aha Hydrangea, which we planted 3 of last year. I was so thrilled to get those in my garden. They have huge blooms, huge double blooms that kind of look water lily-esque, and they will bloom pink or blue depending on your soil chemistry, but they grow about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, which I love. I love shrubs that size because they're just so easy to put in your garden wherever. Now these like part sun to sun, they do require a minimum of 4 hours of good, strong sunlight in order to perform the best. This particular variety of hydrangea blooms on both new and old wood, which is really good news for those of us that have really hard winters sometimes in case the buds get damaged. We still will get some flowers the next year, but it's a really good idea to plant this type of hydrangea somewhere where you can just let it get its full size. Don't ever prune it back if you can help it, because that way you'll get the full crop of blooms. Usually it blooms somewhere like early to midsummer all the way through fall. And so you only just want to cut out dead wood as needed. So it really is a low maintenance plant. And the last one on the list is called Double Play Doozie Spirea. And I think what makes this one unique is that it's seedless. So instead of spending energy trying to produce seed and then spread itself around your garden like some of the old varieties of Spirea would do, this one sends its energy into flowers instead. So it blooms for most of the year. It just keeps reblooming. So when it comes out in the spring, the foliage is really beautiful too. It's like a bright red, and then it starts to mellow out a little bit. And then it has flowers that come out about late spring, kind of like a purpley red, and then it blooms all the way through fall. Now this is another one that grows about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide and blooms on both new and old wood. They do like part sun to sun. They're a zone 3 through 8. They are drought tolerant and deer resistant. So that's it, you guys. That's my huge list of new varieties of plants coming out from Proven Winners, and that's not even all of them. But I'm sure this video is pretty long at this point. I just can't help myself. It just is exciting. It's exciting to learn about new plants and learn new things. So anyway, I hope you guys found this video interesting. If you get your hands on any of these plants, let me know. Tag me so I can see them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.